bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
All right, welcome to another episode of Behind the Gear, and we are joined by a repeat guest. But we got Wade Russell with us, joining us from the East Coast of Canada. So the reason I want to bring you on, Wade, is, obviously we talked, but you moved to New Brunswick to pursue teachers college. So first of all, how'd the move go? How'd everything go? I know you took a little bit of a couple of weeks, kind of a 2-week little vacation, kind of cruising out on the East Coast. But what was it like, and what do you think of it out there?
It was good. Everything went pretty smoothly. Got settled in, apartment worked out well, and so me and my girlfriend we decided that we were going to kind of do a little bit of sightseeing, and we went up early, especially at the time when we were planning. We weren't sure what the quarantine rules were going to be like with COVID and everything, so we really allotted like 2 weeks just in case there was a mandatory quarantine just from new travelers. But we hit Quebec City on the way out, which was awesome. We did 2 nights in town there, and it's like a place you could do.
Yeah,
probably it's unbelievable, even just in such a small area. The restaurants, the sites, just the little things that you can kind of do, in the street performers. And we did like a little bit of a booze cruise, which was awesome. And so we did 2 nights there, and then we came and got into Fredericton. So I'm at St. Thomas University, which is kind of a smaller campus on University of New Brunswick's campus.
Yeah,
similar to kind of King's College in London, how it sits on Western's property sort of thing. And then getting in here, it was awesome. Like we went and did whale watching. We went, what else did we end up doing? We did the Bay of Fundy. Like they've just finished this national kind of parkway where you can drive through.
Oh,
and
cool.
So every 100, 200, 300 yards, meters, whatever, there's like different walk-offs. You can just park and then get out and do a different hiking trail. You can hike the whole thing. I think it's like 40 kilometers or something like that. And you can actually buy like overnight passes. We weren't too interested in doing that. So we did the driving route, but you can go all the way down to the beach. So you're on, the Bay of Fundy floor, technically the ocean floor. For anybody listening that isn't really familiar, this is where like the tide recedes like drastically over the course of the day. So you can walk out like 3 football fields onto the ocean floor.
How cool is that, man?
When the tide pulls out, and then you can also watch it come back in. So we did that in a couple different locations. There's some waterfalls, like more of kind of scenic trails and footpaths, but we did that for sightseeing. And then we just try to hit like a lot of restaurants. Like the one thing that was very interesting about moving from London to Fredericton is everything's very accessible. I mean, it's a smaller town to begin with, but like the bike paths and the trails and everything's just kind of in this one central hub. Like it's very easy to get to, whether by foot, by bike, or by car. So we just try to hit as many little spots as we could when we were here.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And what do you think, like, for anybody, even Canadians, man, but anybody who hasn't been to Canada, or if you're in the US, it's not a far drive to get up and check it out. But man, there's some really cool spots in Canada that being, if you've always lived in Ontario, or you've always lived in Saskatchewan, or you've always lived wherever, man, when you start kind of expanding your boundaries a little bit, it's crazy, right? Like that all that stuff that you're describing is like unbelievable. And it's right in our country, right? Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Like it's driving in was one of the coolest parts, like, cause I ended up doing the drive. I wanted to have my truck here to have access for my school placements as well as hockey and anything that I got kind of involved in. So we drove out. So like you go through all the Appalachian Mountains. So like Ontario's flat. You drive to Ottawa, like it's flat. Drive to Windsor, it's flat. At least in that kind of southwestern corner and whatnot. But here, like you're either going on an uphill incline or going down. And it's just like you're going up and through all these hills. In the back rural part of Quebec was, there's all these just like little hidden lake towns that you're driving through, and you don't really know if you're even going to make it to where you're going. Like there's no road, everything's bumpy, but it was beautiful. Like I didn't really know what to expect when we kind of set out driving, but it was a very cool drive. Like very glad that was kind of the way that we decided to come out here.
No, that's awesome, man. And one of the big reasons why I wanted to have you on, obviously we always talk shop and talk hockey, and you're continuing, your education, and always kind of have some cool insights and stuff on kind of what's trending, what's new, what's upbeat. But one of the things too, and you've been on the pod before, and we've talked about different things, obviously, but I really want to punch this home for parents, especially for young players that, maybe don't get an opportunity to get drafted, or don't get an opportunity to play, college or university or pro or whatever that is. You're under 26 or 26. You've parlayed a pretty good career already, as far as being a professional student, number one. But even like, you played junior, obviously, and then went to Western, didn't play hockey at Western, went to school, got on with us at Total Package Hockey, pretty much worked almost full time through your whole time at Western with us, like at nights, weekends, and then full time in the summer. Like made some decent money to help cover off school, and obviously I think learned a lot. We learned a lot from you as well. But and then from there you worked with the Knights. You worked with Western, who's an unreal Canadian university hockey team. Obviously went to nationals last year, which got cut short with COVID, which sucked. And then now on with UNB, which is like another powerhouse hockey team in Canada. Done your Hockey Canada skills certification. Like, I'm pumping your tires here, but doing your masters, going to teachers college. So what I'm getting at though is, this didn't just happen by accident because you're a good guy and you threw a couple of resumes around. You know what I mean? Like, and I think, if you look at it right now, kind of what I just went through, but how all that stuff happened. I mean, I kind of know, but you reached out to a lot of people, did a lot of research. You knew it was kind of trending, knew what was going on. And you obviously did the legwork behind the scenes to be able to, help create some of these opportunities. And clearly some of it is who but also, there's got to be some legwork to that. So like for you, like what kind of advice would you give to young kids out there that guys, girls that maybe want to get into the game or stay involved or learn skills or coach or whatever?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like, I try to always, like, I'm a very much a big believer in do what you love. Like, don't pursue what you enjoy doing. But at the same time, like you gotta, what that kind of gets at, and what I would say is like, don't be afraid to be a little bit more internal, like look inward and ask yourself questions like, what do you like? What are your interests and whatnot? And the only reason I say that is like, I realized like I didn't really enjoy playing the sport when I kind of got to junior B for a lot of different reasons. And my perspectives changed on it as I got older, like the culture and certain things I'm sure kind of wore me down probably more than I had thought of at the time. I just kind of accepted as I'm burnt out, because you always hear about burnout and things like that. But at the same time, I realized I really started to take to the X's and O's and the culture building. Like I loved being captain or assistant captain, not because of the letter or anything but I enjoyed, when the room was quiet, speaking up. And so these are all things that I kind of didn't really know, but I was going through in kind of the high school age. So I was part of a program called LEAP, Leaders in Exercise and Athletics program. And the reason I always kind of come back to that is that was probably my first taste of what a lot of people call now experiential learning. So we would do 2 classes in the morning, and then we would actually go and do a co-op. So we would run a high school gym class, or we would ref an elementary school basketball tournament, or we would go internships. Like my job with Total Package Hockey, and you guys actually started, I'd known you from working or skating with you guys and being more of a student, but I'd actually started as an internship there and just helping you out with morning ice times and things like that. And it kind of grew from there. So I kind of had this understanding of 2 things. I knew I really liked the sport of hockey and what it could do for people when it was done properly. And then I also knew that probably the best way to go about learning and getting certain competencies was combining coursework with experiences. Like I never wanted to be the person that just had opened a book and could talk to you about what they read in that book. But I always wanted to be able to actually say, okay, I recognize this from the coursework, but here's how it actually happens. Like a lot of the things I've learned in my master's, I've been fortunate to watch you do over the course of however many years now. So I have really good balance between a fundamental understanding, I guess you could say, but also like what's practical. Like how does that actually work in the workplace, right? Like you can't just go up to a player and, start speaking jargon and sciencey terms and things like that. Like you got to relate to them. You got to understand them. You got to ask them, how your family doing. So going back to the kind of the high school thing, I had a very clear idea that I always wanted to be working no matter what I was doing in terms of schooling. And I wanted to kind of be coupling and pairing that. So as far as advice, I would say it's important to understand what you like to do, and it's okay to change too. Like there's been I've made a few changes along the way. Like up until the Knights, I would say I was pretty gung ho at wanting to get behind a bench and be a coach and run a whole program. And that still very much is kind of my aspirational goal. But I've been okay with kind of stepping away a little bit and pursuing this teaching path, just because it allows me a little bit more comfort of, maybe a little bit more financial security and things of that nature. But then also just, I love the relating to kids part of things. Like that's what I really love to do. And there's always an aspect of when you're a head coach and things, there's only so much of that you can do. There's that screen there. There's that bit of tension always between a coach and a player. So I wanted to kind of pursue teaching as well, so that I got another kind of perspective on how to, manage a classroom, how to manage a group of students, how to kind of take everything in. But no, it's been a crazy journey. But like you said, I do think the people part's important. Like I'm very fortunate to have had people like yourself, my parents, Wendy Glover, people that when they gave you advice, not only was it sound advice, but it was like from a good place. Like they wanted the best for you. So it's just do what you love, pursue it endlessly, right? Like don't, I haven't changed it. I want to be involved in hockey. Like I never cared that I wasn't the kid that made AAA when I was, 10 years old. I never cared. Like I always talk about, we had a really good A hockey team. A couple guys went on to get drafted and things like that. Like I'm the only one involved in hockey in any capacity now, in any capacity.
It's crazy, right?
Like, so it's just, and even we talked about, I think on a recent one with Kevy, where it's just like most guys that I know that play now are the kids that played house league growing up. Like they're the ones playing beer leagues. All the guys that played competitive hockey aren't really playing hockey anymore.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Why is that? So it's I don't know. I think there's a lot of different ways you can be involved in sport, and I took the positives, and now I'm trying to kind of reflect on some of the things I didn't like, and then hopefully change that kind of moving forwards.
No, that's cool, man. I think a couple of things I want to touch on what you said. You said, I kind of was done with the game. And I think a lot of times we go through that, and it ebbs and flows a little bit, meaning I've had bad years where I'm like, I want to quit. This is brutal. I suck. It's not going well. Coaches and playing me, whatever that is. And that's a little bit different. But when you kind of lose the passion for the game a little bit, where you're like, I don't really want to go to practice tonight, or I don't really, whatever level that is, could be pro to like AA, Bantam, or house league, it's okay to not want to go. You know what I mean? It's okay. Like I know sometimes you feel like you're disappointing your parents or your coaches or whoever, but maybe finishing out that year would be a good thing. And then, I'm going to try something else. And I think that's okay. Like, and I think that's really important for players, especially to understand, especially at young ages, that I don't really love it anymore. I don't really want to play anymore. And you see a lot of players too that play AAA all the way up. And the next, in midget or, when they're getting 15, 16, what do? They go back and play house league with their buddies, not to go light it up, just go have fun, go play for the fun of the game again, which I think is great. And you realize not at a young age saying, you know what, I think I'd like to be on the other side of this maybe a little bit and teach a little bit. I like working with kids, and you were already starting to work with kids a little bit at that point. I think, on 15, 16, 17, you were kind of helping us out and you were on the ice. And I think that's huge, is being able to like self-reflect on that and be like, yeah, it's okay. And then also having the support group around you that's not, you know what I mean? Oh my God, you're quitting. No, you can't quit. You're playing junior. Like, let's try to get a scholarship. Like, I don't want to do that, man. And I think that's important too. Having parents that understand that, and parents that aren't always trying to push. And don't get me wrong, man, as a parent, I think anytime your kid comes to you and says, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, and you love it as a parent, it's a social thing for your family. It's a social thing for your kid. Your kid's got a lot of buddies. That's hard. As a parent, I don't think that's easy to be like, yeah, no problem, bud. All right, let's go downhill skiing, or let's try it on the bowling team. Like, it sucks. You know what I mean? But I think as a parent, sometimes you got to step aside and say, you know what, if they're old enough or they're having this conversation with me, there's clearly something there. Let's pursue this and make sure that it is the right thing, and he doesn't want to play or she doesn't want to play, and go from there. So I think that's something that's really important for players to realize and be like, yeah, you know what, it's time. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's okay, right?
For sure. And it's tricky too, because like I know internally is like my parents especially made like a lot of sacrifices, and the older I've gotten, I've probably realized, the more you learn about finances and things that go into like, career planning and things like that, like you realize to make all those tournaments, to afford all that equipment, to do all the extra skates, like you realize they sacrifice a lot. So that's always been a kind of a driving thing for me, was like, I'm very proud to be their kid. And I want to, because I don't think that just because they didn't make it to the NHL that all of that like is diminished in its value. Right. But internally, and to your point, like it can be hard as a kid, because that's kind of the way that you think a lot. Like the brain's a funny thing, the way that you internalize things and you perceive them. So I remember actually calling my dad to let him know that I was thinking about pursuing this BED and that I would have to move, just because it's to get people caught up. It's a 1-year program out here. That's not in Ontario. It's 2 years. So a big appeal for me coming here rather than doing it in Ontario was getting it all done by this coming spring/summer. And I remember I kind of told him, and not that I was ever worried what he'd think. Like I knew he's always been supportive, but I remember he said, he goes, I don't care if you move dirt. Like I don't care what as long as you're happy. And so I remember that kind of, for whatever reason, that gave me like a big sense of relief. Not that I was going in thinking, oh, he's going to say no or whatever, but just to hear him say that or whatever, it made me feel, no matter what I do, I'll be all right. But it was hard to let go initially in hockey, because it's your identity too, right? And we hear this is why athletes have such a hard time letting go. It's, you're referred to as the hockey guy in the group, as the football player in the group, as the tennis star in the group, whatever it might be. And you're not, in some cases, some circles, you're not even the person first. Like it's what you do. It's not who you are, where that's a big thing that I think could change a little bit more of is you're just a person who plays hockey or does this thing. Like I think a lot of people struggle where their identity is so tied to a role, a responsibility, a job, a sport, that's when they have a really hard time letting go. And even at young ages.
Totally. Yeah. And I feel like, honestly, as a parent, I think that falls a little bit on the parents at a young age, where everything revolves around hockey or soccer or whatever that sport is. And I think that internally drives pressure on the kids a little bit, obviously. And I think how the parents address it, and how the parents talk to the kids about it, and how it's always the conversation. It's always always reverts back to hockey. And we've had conversations with parents numerous times. You're talking about the stock market or the sun or the weather. And next thing you know, it's back to little Jimmy's tournament the weekend, or little Heather, how she scored 3 goals. Like, how did we get here? And so I think a lot of times with parents, we got to navigate that a little bit better too, or no, man, you're a good kid. You're a good student. You did so good in math. Hey, let's go for a bike ride. Like I totally agree with you. I think kids should have more, your identity should be who you are as far as a person, not what you do or what you play or what you wear, and I think that's really important for parents to kind of push that with kids and make sure they understand that at young ages, so that they don't feel like, man, if I quit hockey, what am I going to do now? I'm nothing. Like, no, you got tons of other things. You play the guitar, you know how to do this or whatever that is. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's really, really important to have other outlets for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned something else too that I want to touch on, because I think this is huge, more for parents and especially coaches. You said, like, I really wanted to have the practical part as well as the educational part. And I've seen it so many times where you meet a level 27 coach, I'm over exaggerating, but like a level 3 Hockey Canada coach, or level 4, a master's coach, and they can't skate, or, you know what I mean? They can't really run a practice very well, but they know all the systems and all the drills and all what they're supposed to do here, and all the rules, all the regulations, all that kind of stuff. So I think that it's really, really important for coaches to have that mix of getting on the ice. And if you're a young coach, go seek somebody out, go mentor with another coach, go mentor with a skills training coach, or go mentor with a skills group that does, hockey schools, things like that. But man, learn as much as you can on the on ice piece of it, because whatever that sport is, with the practical part, I think is huge, and how you deliver, and get around good people that do run good stuff, because you and I've seen it, man. Like, you go out on the ice with certain people and you're like, whoa, he can't run a drill. Like, she just can't command a group or can't talk at a board. And that is so hard, like that, because that trickles through a team. And then all of a sudden, what practice is like after that. Right. So I think that's really, really important too, to get that practical experience. Now, in saying that, you've gone from obviously London, Ontario to the East Coast. What have you noticed the differences between even like high level hockey? So you look at college, university, is it pretty similar? And then even minor hockey, you've been helping her a little bit with minor hockey, like kind of been around the rinks and stuff. Have you noticed any like kind of big differences, or has it been pretty similar to what we do in Ontario?
No, it's interesting. Like, there's definitely similarities there, but so I'm being involved a little bit with the UNB men's team. So that's kind of where I would be drawing from my kind of competitive perspective, as opposed to say a Western or London Knights team or somewhere competitive in London. And then they also run some minor hockey skates as well. So that's kind of where that minor hockey thing is coming from. So the biggest thing I'd noticed at the minor hockey level, there's much greater focus on compete and battle than there is just on overall skill set and like stop, break down, and really there is individual attention in the sense that there is really good coach to player ratios. Like, there's probably 4 players for every 1 coach, maybe even at times 3 players, like really good ratios. Yeah. There's a lot of fun, there's a lot of engagement, but it's not so much stop, try this 3 times on your own and then go back. It's a lot more of, go, like stick lifts, a little bit of battles, shoulder check, eyes up, but just little more kind of habits and whatnot. And that kind of does tie into, because it is being run by the overall UNB team and men's team and their program. When you see them, their biggest thing that it's been mind blowing to be a part of, and I'm very fortunate, is the culture is unbelievable. Like, the focus on the development of the culture. Like, yes, they do have really good players and they recruit very, very well, but you see why. Like, initially you think it's just because they're the preeminent program. They've won so many championships, right? It's the place to be. But you get why it's become the place to be, because the moment a guy comes in on a recruiting trip and, goes out with the guys for a night, or is in the locker room, or sees the facility, it's all about the program. Like, the culture building, I would say, started 20 years ago when the head coach took over. Like, what he's achieving today, you can almost tell that he had in mind since day one back then. And it's just being reciprocal and building year over year over year. And it's very much just about, like, one of their quotes is, "We are who we are because of who they were." And so it's constantly referenced every other guy that's come before and has contributed in some way to the program. So it's I could go on all day about it. Like, it's very cool. It's been a very interesting learning experience. I'm just trying to observe as much as I can, but it's a lot of compete. It's a lot of culture. And that trickles down, I would say, into the minor hockey aspect of things. Like, there's not, but I'm only at 1 rink. I've only seen 1 program. I haven't. And the only other thing I would add in is, way bigger emphasis on multi-sports and multi-sport athletes, or not even multi-sport, but just not playing hockey in the summer is a better way of saying it.
Yeah, totally.
A lot more of that. Like we were playing softball with the men's team, and it was, one of the guys made a comment. He's like, you can tell who only ever grew up playing hockey.
Totally.
Right. And because that kind of age group is to trickle into higher levels. Whereas there's still quite a few guys that would have grown up playing ball in the spring and lacrosse in the summer, basketball in the winter as well. Like, so there seems to be a greater emphasis in that as well. Like baseball's big out here, soccer's big here. So.
Oh, it's cool. And I think like overall, and I'm stereotyping, but the East Coast is very like family, blue collar. You know what I mean? You pull into a rink in Toronto, it's way different than pulling into a rink in New Brunswick. You know what I mean? Just different people, different culture. So it is really cool to see that. And the other thing too, a lot of times, I know for me personally, I've said this for years, like, oh, the Eastern Canadian university teams do so well because they have a lot of money. It's like saying, you know, Michigan is so good at hockey because they have tons of money and they can offer good scholarship packages and the whole nine, right? Where that I think partly is true, but it's really, really cool to hear about a program that's had so much success over the years. I mean, this is a team that's gone to the national championship. I don't even know how many times. Like, it's crazy, right? Like probably every couple of years they're there.
Yeah, they've won 8 since like 1998, and
it's crazy. Yeah, it's nuts. But it is cool to see, like, when you start peeling back the layers, like, oh, these are some of the reasons why they're successful. Yeah, they have money and they have, you know, they do well with fundraising and all that stuff, which is awesome. But it is cool to see, like, okay, yeah, there's a lot more here than what we think living, you know, thousands of kilometers away, right? So that's cool.
It's awesome. Like, even just going out with the guys, like, I mean, the bar scene or whatever you want to call it, the nightlife here is different, but you know, it's just them sitting around a table with each other. Like, there's no dance floor, there's no huge hoopla around them. It's just them sharing stories with each other, talking about one another, talking about hockey, talking shop. Like, it's very stark difference to what I've been exposed to at the major junior and CIS level, even in Ontario there. It's pretty impressive. Like, practice habits, like they're maybe only skate 45 minutes. You know, coach comes in the room, gives them their first kind of couple drills, bang, bang, bang. You got to keep up. Like, rookies are like getting lost. Like, but and the vets do a great job. Like, they're like, hey, you got to be here. You got to do this. Like, they get caught up to speed quick, but the pace is unbelievable. Like, coach was telling me a story that they were at nationals one year, and Sportsnet typically does cover the U Sport nationals and finals and whatnot. And Sam Constantino and another guy, so one of the commentators there, who cover a lot of major junior and cover a lot of different sports, NHL, whatnot. And they said it was the most game applicable practice. Like, everything starts with a stick lift, a retrieval, spin off a body. Like, it's unbelievable how much they package into a 45 to 50 minute session. They go hard and then they're off the ice and then away they go to the gym. Yeah. Like, it's really well done. They're a well-oiled machine for sure.
Oh, it's really cool. And that's stuff too, for those parents or coaches maybe didn't catch what you were saying. You know, instead of starting a drill with a player carrying the puck, you know, start a drill with the player carrying the puck, and the other player that's actually going to start the drill stick lifts him and steals it, or angles him out, has to angle him to get the puck back, you know, and then that actually starts the drill. You know, I think those are cool little things to make it more game applicable, obviously, and you know, have kids working on stuff that they're going to be using, you know, exactly in a game, you know. And I think that's really cool, man. And I've heard that before about UNB, that they run it kind of like a pro team. You know, they go 45 minutes to an hour max, and then they get their stuff done, boom, and then they're off, and then they're doing their next thing and working out or going to class or whatever it is. So it's cool. Yeah, it's really, really cool to kind of hear the inside thing, like the kind of an insider on that. And here in Detroit, like, so we've been here for almost 2.5, 3 weeks now, which has been kind of a crazy whirlwind, obviously, just trying to navigate, first of all, geographically where we are in Detroit and the city and stuff. So just getting around is kind of crazy. And then both my kids have been playing hockey. So my daughter and my son are both playing hockey. So the big thing I noticed here in Detroit is that they focus a lot on small areas. They do a lot of like forestations for practices. And now my kids are young. So my kids are, you know, 9 years old. So I guess that'd be U9 and U7. And, but a lot of stations, a lot of small area games, tons of small area games. At times it can get a little bit like just running through tracks and running through stuff and like a little bit too organized sometimes, you know, and to your point, not a ton of correction. But I think also too, it's been awesome. Like, it's been really, really good. My kids have loved it, and it's been good. I've been getting on the ice a little bit, and that's just, I think, I'm not knocking the coaches on this. I think it's a lot of just like who's coaching and who's on the ice. And, you know, my habits are to stop kids and talk to them and really hammer the fundamentals. I don't care what the drill is, but if I want the kids to go back and shoulder check and look over, scan the ice, then if I don't see them do it, I'll stop them, bring them back, do it again. But I want to use, so I think it's a lot more on the coaches than it is, just what they're doing. But I've been really impressed, man. It's been really, really cool. And I've watched there's been a college practicing here as well before. Sometimes they do a ton of small area games. They do it's really interesting, man. So overall it's been great, but again, I've got a small sample size. It'll be, I'll get bigger as we go and get into more rinks and stuff like that. But, and with London, I mean, a lot of times when we watch minor hockey practices, it's a lot of big flow drills, and a lot of times as they get older, especially U10, U11, U12, they're doing breakouts, they're doing 3-on-2s, they're doing, more game style stuff where I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the kids still need to work on their skills. There still should be a big skill component to it. I'm not saying all the coaches are doing this, but just it is interesting to kind of see what's going on in different areas. Very, very similar, clearly, it's hockey. So no one's reinventing the wheel, but it is cool to see what the trends are in different areas, what the tendencies are in different areas. It's really cool.
Yeah. There's kids don't have Instagram accounts out here. They don't, they don't have little profiles. They're not pushing products. That's the one thing I was talking to a couple, because so for school, we got assigned a pod, probably COVID related, but also just so you get to know some people. So I have this group of people that were called Pod 6. And so that's kind of the people that I would hang out on campus quite a bit. They become my friend group and whatnot. And I've been asking them, because a lot of them were involved in different sports. One was a rugby player, one was more of a ball player, one was a hockey player. And just what's it like the culture? And they do have the odd crazy parent. I mean, that stuff's everywhere and whatnot, but there really isn't this emphasis on an online profile. There isn't an emphasis on really climbing any sort of ladder. You just play, and if you're good, you keep playing. And if not, you keep playing just as well, just at a different level. It's quite different. So,
well, here and in Detroit, it's very much a big city hockey. Hockey's obviously a really, really big sport. Now football's huge, and basketball, they have all their 4 major sports, but in the hockey community, there's still kids here doing privates, twice a week, plus there's 3 practices a week, at the U7 level, they're practicing 2 to 3 times a week, which is a lot compared to what we were used to, with that young age group. Same thing with the U9s. But there are a lot of kids that are doing a ton of extra. And the other thing too here, I don't know what it's like there, but I've always joked about this. Even London's getting this a little bit too, but even in Toronto or Detroit, you wheel in a parking lot at the rink, and there's, you got your F-150s, you got your Escalades, you got your Range Rovers, you got your, you know what I mean? It's so
tense set up, and everybody's it's a event.
Totally, man. We had a little game in Cleveland again, 3 hours away for 2 games on a Sunday. No, thank you at all. But it was great. It was good. But just 6 hours of driving for 2 games. But that it was really cool. It was fun. It was great. It was a good experience for the kids and stuff. But it was there's some intense already, right? It's intense, man.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much I'm looking forward to that, to be honest with you. As my son and daughter get older, if they do like it, they want to keep trying to play competitive hockey. Right now it's not even competitive. So when they get into competitive, I don't know. And I guess the biggest thing I can say to parents is know your kid, know what type of kid you have, and be able to say no, because you're going to get asked to go to this skate or this spring team or this tournament or this, and sometimes it's no, man, I can't, we can't do this, and it could not even be financially. Just, I want to have a barbecue at my house on Sunday with my family. I don't want to go do an extra skate on a Sunday or whatever, and I think that's really, really important too, just not to get caught up with the Joneses, because when you get into situations like this, even here, I haven't been yet, but you easily could get anxious. Oh my God, am I doing enough? Oh my God, and then you start freaking yourself out, and I just, it can be a lot for sure, man. And I totally get it. As a parent, it can be overwhelming.
And that's exactly what it is. I found it was the whole keeping up with the Joneses, or hearing through word of mouth that so-and-so skating with such and such, or doing this in their extra time or whatever. And it's just, your kid, if you need to consult people that maybe are a little bit more knowledgeable, speak to Dwayne Blay about, what a skill plan might look like how many times on ice of the week at this age does that look like for what that player needs. Consult people, but stick to your plan, do what you think is best. And it's tricky, because the older I get, the more I just realize we're all just grown up kids. All the same stuff you deal with when you're a kid, you're kind of dealing with, right? If you're that new family onto a hockey team, a competitive hockey team that's maybe together for 4 or 5 years, it's hard for that group of parents to break into that social circle. For right? Sure. And you have some that do, and they almost swing the needle so far the other way, and then they get all caught up in doing everything. And then others are a little bit standoffish. And then what do you start hearing through the grapevine? people talking smack about that family. And they haven't even
For
done it.
sure.
It's at least
Yeah.
in the London. And I do unfortunately think it's funny. Like I've never moved away from London in my life, never lived anywhere other than London. And it's just even moving away now, like you just see like how much Toronto and all those behaviors have bled into like that area as well. Cause it's nothing like that out here.
It's crazy. So I coached out there in New Brunswick, St. John, New Brunswick for a year. And that was my first real big exposure to the East Coast. Unbelievable. It was so awesome. Like people were so friendly. It was, and we always say this is all cliches, but they were like genuinely nice, like stop cars when you're trying to cross the road. Like I said the story way back, but I remember like one of my first days I was going to grab like dinner. I was by myself staying at the hotel. I was going to walk across the street. I go to take a step. All like 2 cars stop like on both sides of the road. I'm like, I literally backpedal. I'm like, no, go. They wouldn't move. And I'd like walked across. Like people are just courteous. They're friendly. They like to have a good time. They like to be social. They like to get togethers. Like it's awesome. And you're right. Like the drama part, I think there's a lot of like small townness of it where everyone kind of knows everyone's stuff a little bit, like as you get into it, you know what I mean? But other than that, I mean, everyone's, there's gossipy stuff and whatever, but it's not like, if somebody gets a new truck, you don't have 4 neighbors going to buy a new truck,
Yeah.
Like it's a little different, right? Yeah.
And I noticed it a lot too, just even like the little things, like in this ice time, like almost every parent will either make their kids say thank you to the coach. The kids already just do say thank you to the coach, or they themselves will come down and just make sure that they see a coach and say thank you for the skate, whatever. And I always think about like us in the hallway, the amount of parents that would come seek us out for like, oh, next time can you do like, and don't get me wrong, like there is something to say about advocating for your kid. Like if you really feel like your kid didn't get talked to at all in a session and you're out with us when we were running ice times in London, like we did try to hit every kid. So if we didn't, 100% come let us know. But almost every ice time there would at least be 2 or 3 or 4 comments just of like getting in your ear a little bit. Like there's none of that here. Like nobody's looking for anything extra. It's just they show up for the ice time, kids happy, got a skate, they moved a little bit, they sweat a little bit, they made a friend, and then they go. Like it's really different. It's crazy.
It is. It's so interesting. And I think too, like for parents, man, pump the brakes when you're in a big program. Like when you're in a program with 20, 30 kids in it, that's what you're paying for.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're not going to, Johnny's not going to be with the best kids all the time. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. Like that's what you're paying for. That's why you sign up for 20, 30 kids. It's a little more affordable. It's great. But like, why are you going to the coach and saying, hey, listen, I'd really like my kid to be with the better kids. He's just not getting challenged, or, if it's terrible, I get it 100%. You're spending money on it. No problem. But was it really that bad? Or were you just like going off in your own mind and the hamster wheel fell off the track there for a second and you got a little lit up about it and got a little rattled, like, I don't know. I think, if you want that, then go get a private, go get 4 or 5 kids and put a small group together. And then the other thing too is like, man, when these kids are like 7, 8, like relax, like, please relax, man. Like they're so young. And I know some of these kids are good. Trust me. Like you've seen them, Wade, I've seen them. Like some of these kids are like really good at 8 and 9, but guess what? They're 8 and 9 years old. Like there's a lot that's going to happen from that age to whatever. Right. So
there's still so many lessons in it. Like, okay, he or she's in a group with, maybe a couple weaker players. Like I remember being in tryouts and, you get your jersey numbers and that's your line. Like if I'm number 16, I'm playing with 17 and 18 and, who knows who's on your wing or who your D partner is. And what are you going to do? Just melt down, shut down, have mom or dad come to the bench for you and ask if you can be put on a different line in the middle of tryouts. Like just say, hey, like when you're with better players, really work to keep up. Like that's a good opportunity. When you're with players that are maybe you feel a little bit weaker, try to elevate them, try to cheer them on, try to pat them on the back. Like just teach your kids lessons. I don't know.
Yeah. One other thing too, I want to bring this up because I think it's important. So one thing I've done with my kids over the last couple of years is like when we go to the rink, I come in obviously, and I'm still doing up, my daughter skates, my son's getting a little bit better with his, but they go to the locker room on their own. They get dressed on their own. Like, if we had to come COVID rules or whatever dress, that's fine. They get dressed on their own at home, bring in the rink, I'll help them with their skates. They can do them up, I'll tighten them if they're too loose, just because it does suck to skate and loose skates. So, and then after the skate, like literally my daughter was out yesterday after the skate. I just walked in the lobby, I was watching a little bit, and then I just walked in the lobby and waited for her. And then she came out, got undressed all on her own. And I'm not saying it's bad to do this or not bad to do this. I'm just give your kids some independence, man. And trust me, there's times my son or daughter is the last one out because they're like so slow. And it'd be way quicker if I was in there just getting them undressed, but I'm like, for this 5 minutes right now, this is really important for them just to learn how to do this on their own and then get out. So really big advice for parents, no matter the sport, man, let your kids get dressed and undressed on their own. I still see parents undoing kids' skates.
Yeah, let
at
him struggle
9 years old. Yeah, man,
I
it's
say
a
this
double
as somebody
knot.
that probably wishes he had like a little more struggle. Like I'm not saying this like I'm tough, hard around the edges. Like my dad just threw me out in the doghouse for a night. Like no, like, I wish I probably had like knowing what I know now and growing up. Like I wish I had even a little bit more struggle. Like was told no a little bit more. Like
Yeah,
it's just all these things are important. Like you got to be thinking so long term. You got to have the perspective of like, even though in that moment, like you said, it's frustrating or they're late, they're slow or whatever, like you got to be thinking 10, 15, 20 years down the road, what you're trying to build them up to be able to be capable of, whatever that is. Like you don't know, nobody knows till they get there and it's completely ongoing, but you got to let them struggle. You got to say no, like,
no, I totally agree.
Down.
If you hear any background noise right now, I'm hiding. I'm not hiding, but I'm sitting at an arena right now. So there could be some kids that are starting to get off school that are about to train or skate or doing warm-ups or whatever. So it could potentially be getting loud, but but no, I couldn't agree more, man. I think it's so important to let them kind of figure it out sometimes. And and the whole thank you thing, I think is, to me, that's just like a life skill. You know what I mean? Someone opens the door for you, like, hey, thanks. You see somebody in the morning, hey, good morning. Like those to me are just kind of just like life 101 things. Like I'm not saying you got to go in and be like, hey, how are you doing? How was your day? Or whatever. But just a please and a thank you. And for any parent, that coach is putting a little bit of time in, even if they suck, right? And that's a rude thing to say, but let's say the coach sucks. There's a lot of shitty coaches out there. But maybe it's a dad who's, busy or a mom who's been crazy busy at work and whatever. It doesn't matter. They're still taking time to like go on the ice with your kid or son or daughter. They still have taking time to make sure they have pucks and pylons and a bit of a plan. So like, I don't know, to me, that's just like, hey, like, thanks, thanks for putting the time in. And to teach that lesson to your kid, I think is huge. It's such a big, big thing for those kids as more of a life lesson than anything,
Yeah, 100%. And I think hopefully as the sport landscape changes and hopefully corrects itself a little bit more, like a lot more of that stuff should also be being built in. Right. Like I think, because there is always that block too, like for the kids, for whatever reason, especially when they get to that kind of tween years, between teenage years, like you're becoming your own person. So part of that is you do kind of rebel no matter what, in some degree, some capacity of your parents. Right. So it's important that they have other people, that the parents have surrounded them with other people, aunts, uncles, their friend groups, their parents are really quality people, the coaches, the teachers, like seeing things modeled, like it's easy to give your kid a lesson, but you got to live that lesson too. Like, like all this stuff going on in the world right now, like, it sucks. And you don't want to follow the rules, or you don't want to but if you want your kid to follow the rules or be polite, or you need to be doing those things as well. You need to be opening doors for people. You need to be thanking people. You need to be engaging with people. Like, I think that's where a lot of it gets lost. I think a lot of people, raise their kids well, but I think to them raising, it's just like telling a story, telling a lesson. And that's kind of it. Like if you really want it to stick, like so many of my behaviors, good and bad, or like I noticed from my parents, right? Like I always remember my dad, the one thing that always bugged him when he was driving is if it was 2 lanes, right? And we were trying to turn right and merge into a traffic, and there was somebody who wouldn't go, even though the other people are in the left lane, like the right lane's wide open. And you always go, there's 2 lanes. So what have I caught myself doing as I get older? Right? Like, the good and the bad both comes with it, but it's just like, whatever you're modeling behaviors, like your kids, like so much development is implicit, and it's the wheels spinning in back here. It's not just this overt process where it's as simple as telling them to do something. You got to do it yourself. You got to live it. You got to, be that type of person as well. And that's where I think a lot of times, things go a little bit different, because not everybody actually models the right behaviors or actually is as quality of a person as maybe they try to teach their kid to be. It's how you act when nobody's looking, right? And you spend a lot of time with your family when nobody else is looking. And that's, I think, when a lot of the truth kind of comes out.
Oh, I totally agree.
Your kids are watching.
Yeah. And I think, you're saying like leading by example, right? Like your parent, like a lot of the stuff that you do say, like I probably swear too much around my kids, and every once in a while they'll throw an F-bomb out, or, you know what I mean? Like, well, like you can't say that, but will you say it? And like, yeah, I know, and I got to catch myself a little bit more. So, you know what I mean? But those are all things, you're right. Even like biking, like I never wore a helmet biking. Just that was the era I grew up in. No one wore a helmet, And I hate wearing helmets. Like I don't like wearing helmets on the ice. I'm bald. I sweat. It's gross, whatever. But I wear a bike when I wear a helmet when I bike with my kids. Like, I don't love it, but it's like, it's probably the right thing to do. And let's be honest, like when I'm downhill skiing, never wore helmets when we were young, ever. I wear a helmet, you know, and I don't mind it, like downhill. But even biking, it's like if I did crash or if I did fall, you know, if I was going for a big mountain bike or it was like something heavy, I would definitely wear a helmet. But you know, I'm just cruising to like Max Milk or the corner store with my kids, like going literally 2 kilometers an hour. Probably don't need it, but it's just one of those things because now I'm gonna ask them to do it, and they're like, "Well, you never wear one." Like, yeah, you're right. And then it's another battle, right? So, yeah, it's all that stuff. I think is huge, and just, you know, yeah, trying to act the right way and trying to teach our kids to be good people, man. At the end of the day, like, you know, like that's massive, man. So what's the daily like for you right now? Like, so you got class going on. You're doing basically teachers college, your master's, and then you're also doing the hockey piece as well. So
Yeah.
how is your, like, how nuts is your schedule right now?
It's okay. I mean, luckily, unluckily, depending on how you look at it, Monday and Wednesdays are really jam packed. Like I basically have 4 classes straight with about an hour long lunch break in the middle. So I go from about 8:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, Wednesday. So those are a bit more of a kind of a grindy day, but that opens up my Tuesday. I have 1 class. You can still hear me right now?
Yeah.
Okay. My Tuesdays open up and I have a lot more kind of going on those days. In terms of like the hockey component, I can get a lot more master stuff done. I can show up, I can film practice, I can break down the clips and kind of file them for the program that I might want to run one day. And then Thursday, same thing, only 1 class in the morning. And then I have a tech one at night. So that's just all through Zoom. And then Fridays is what they've kind of blocked off as professional learning. So today we were at the public library, we got library cards. We learned a little bit about some of the resources they have, which was actually incredible how much they have there. You can rent instruments. There's little kits that you can have, so you can learn how to do Braille or read Braille, how to write with Braille. You can learn how to stitch and sew.
Really?
There's a whole bunch of different things. They have like a community fridge because they actually want to invite people that are, you know, disadvantaged or that are maybe in between places right now or homeless, and to come in and they have access to a fridge and they can actually loiter there. Like that's one of the few places where, you know, a person who doesn't have a home or a place to be can actually live and loiter. So we have kind of little things like that. They've very much focused on putting us into the community. And getting us to kind of learn about, you know, why things are the way that they are here. And so that, you know, being from out of province, I appreciate it, but you can really tell they're really trying to build quality teachers up in their community. So they do that, but yeah, it's busy. I mean, I get the weekends off, so I really can't complain. I still can live a normal life. I was at the driving range earlier this morning and still kind of doing some fun stuff like that. So
that's awesome. And now, and what are your rules with the hockey team? So like when you're going to practice, things like that, like, you know, you got to get going here in a little bit, but you got practice. But how does that work out for you then?
So I would say I'm still kind of in the process of carving out exactly what that role might be and shape up to be. I've been waiting kind of to get a little bit more information from MSU about what my practicum all entails. If anything, right now, I'm kind of like a special assignment coach where I can stay on the ice after practice and work a couple extra minutes with some of the guys. In a lot of ways, I'm really just right now just trying to observe, and because everything I've done in my master's has been about producing essentially a program that I could then go and enact myself, put into place. I want to run a U18, we talked about before, U18 AAA hockey team. So I'm really just trying to, because they have such good drill sets, they have such good processes put in place so that guys know what they're doing the moment they show up to the rink. You know, there's just a key little phrase on the sign, like little simple details, but they just build, you know, week, like we talked about, right? Week over week. But now this has been year over year. So I've really been just trying to document in that regard, but I'd say I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit more skill oriented, because again, that's probably what I'm most comfortable in. I haven't had a ton of X's and O's experience, having not played at a really high level myself. And just, you know, Western, I really was hoping that was going to kind of be what I got out of that year, but COVID, right? So so I don't think there's enough room on the bench or anything like that. So it's more skill development. And then part of my master's has me filming myself coaching and submitting it to my group, and they'll submit feedback about why I did what I did, and kind of challenge me on things. So I'm still kind of working it out, but right now it's just kind of on the staff, being one of the guys. I was fortunate enough to go out with a couple of them, get to know them a little bit better, build a bit of a rapport. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. Just a new
awesome, man. No, you got to get going soon. You got practice.
Yeah. Practice at 2:50. So
okay, buddy. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate it. And I'm glad we got a chance to catch up, and we'll definitely be in touch for sure. And we'll do another round of this for sure. Maybe get a couple of us on there.
Hope things are good your way. Sorry,
I know it's been awesome.
No questions, but
no, it's great, man. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Okay, buddy. Well, good luck with
thanks for having me.
We'll be in touch, man. Okay.
Awesome.
Take care.
All right, have a good weekend, buddy.
All right, you too. Bye.
To kind of raise that bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.